welcome back to my YouTube channel. As promised, I am here at Skins with my most favorite person. I call him the Nose. He knows a lot about fragrances, and today we're going to learn and get a bit of an education. Hello, Brian.
Hello. All right, hope it's going to be fun.
It's going to be amazing.
Okay, let's get into it.
All right, so what are we doing today?
All right, so what I've done, we are doing Fragrance 101.
Fragrance 101.
101. We are taking it to the basics.
Okay.
Right, so I have brought out some of my most, I don't call them favorites, right? So these are my most, I'd say cherished.
Cherished, okay.
For different reasons, of course, right? And I know I've always said, every fragrance is like a personality, right? All right?
Yes.
So I've brought out some of my most unique 5 favorite personalities.
Okay.
And we're gonna get to meet them and just roughly just go through them a little bit and then see how that goes.
It's perfect.
Ready?
I see there's like 3 of my favorites here.
Which and which?
Delina,
Okay.
the Explicit, Portrait of a Lady,
Ooh.
and maybe 4, Love Don't Be Shy.
Love Don't Be Shy. Okay, and we've got a little bit of talking about that, of
And
course.
we're going to talk about that.
A little inside chat about that. Okay, let's get into it. All right, so I'm going to start with Explicit, you know, so I do quite love this. Oh, smells so good.
Is Explicit really what it says it is?
It is a little naughty.
Okay.
Just a little naughty, right? I do think this is probably the most sexiest fragrance we have in this store. And those that do disagree, don't kill me, right? This is for me, right? So fragrance is very personalized, right? That's the one thing I love about fragrance. It's a personal thing. It's an emotional thing, right? And we all have our own different nuances and our own different approaches to fragrance.
Yes.
I've got mine. Mine is very emotional. I like to assert my heart into it, right? Fragrance has to capture me emotionally. If it doesn't do that, I'm just not gonna get into it. And Explicit, well, Explicit is it's my version of that very naughty, sexy lingerie. It is quite fleeting.
You know what? It is such a fave to me.
I do love this. Like
I love it as well.
there's a certain softness about it, right? But it has such an amazing trail to it.
It does.
I think ultimately, right, I think they were trying to induce something that is so seductive, right? So you almost, I think the softness about it is that they want you to be able to just draw it out and just be really captivated by it, right? I don't know, are you getting that?
I'm getting it.
Right.
I'm getting it. It's
Explicit.
stunning.
All right, does it make you want to be explicitly
It does.
untamed?
It does.
Okay.
You know I cannot be tamed.
I dare not. All right, I dare not.
Wild animal.
Challenge not accepted. Not accepted. All right, so we're going to move on from Explicit.
Okay.
And we're going to do, I don't know, should we go into it now? Or
We can.
let's do Love Don't Be Shy.
Love Don't Be Shy. So I know last time I said that Good Girl Gone Bad
Yeah.
was Rihanna's personal favorite fragrance, and actually I was corrected by my lovely followers in the comments, and they told me that Love Don't Be Shy is actually Rihanna's.
Yes. Like Love Don't Be Shy is Joanna's favorite.
Yes.
And
And that's why it was sold out everywhere and
Yeah.
no one could find anything.
It has actually become the most epic fragrance from Killian, from baaacck, along with Good Girl Gone Bad.
Okay.
You went too far.
I went too far.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
you went too far
I
by
wasn't,
suggesting
okay.
that Good Girl Gone Bad was her favorite. Good Girl Gone Bad is somewhat, you know, a vicarious muse, an inspiration by Killian for Rihanna. No, it's not too far off, right?
It's
So
not.
whenever you wear Good Girl Gone Bad, you almost kind of think like Rihanna. I mean, who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
Right, when you think Good Girl Gone Bad, no one comes to mind except for Riri.
Exactly.
Right, so you were close, but no cigar. Maybe a
but
cigar,
no
maybe a
cigar.
cigar, maybe like a small cigar.
Maybe a small cigar.
Maybe a small cigar, right. But Love Don't Be Shy, right? Which in itself is very ironic, right? Because as if love is ever shy, right?
Love is never shy.
Love is never shy, right? But this one, oh my goodness.
I smell it.
I don't know, like do you think if love had a smell, do you think it would smell like that?
You know, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
It's too sweet for me. It's like it's
But love can be sweet. Love is sweet. Love is deliciously sweet.
And sometimes life can be overbearing, which is what I get from this.
No, life is overbearing. Love, on the other hand, different concept.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it is part of that whole crazy four-letter word nonsense. Life and love.
Life
The
and
mysterious
love.
four-letter words. But love is sweet, I think.
It's really nice. How does it dry down?
I think it dries down to more like it's a very palatable, woody floral. I think if you really drag it out to that extent.
Would you say it's a gourmet?
It's
Gourmand.
A gourmand is the Black Phantom is the most notorious gourmand from that specific
Okay.
cause, right? I don't think this is a gourmand in a sense that gourmands have to have like an edible feel to it.
All right.
For instance, when you think of gourmand, right, you would think anything with chocolate, anything with caramel, and sometimes, not all the time, right, vanilla kind of adds a gourmand feel to it.
It does.
But even though vanilla dictates and defines an oriental scent, but you can sometimes have vanilla in gourmand scents because it has to have an edible feel into it.
So there's no vanilla in this one.
No, I don't think there's any vanilla in that, right?
Okay.
But nevertheless, I'm not too crazy about ingredients, right? So we're not cooking yet.
We're not.
I mean, we are cooking a masterpiece, right? But we're not cooking food. So the approach is always very different. Like I said, right? It's not about going through a list of ingredients. It's more about going through the feel of the fragrance, about really allowing the fragrance to evoke a sense of connection into it. And this is why the storytelling is so compulsory. The storytelling kind of almost builds a bridge between the fragrance and then the wearer.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's all about chemistry. You know what I mean? It's like
is.
if there was a fragrance between you and I.
Yes.
Actually, not between you and I. If there was a fragrance for me, I'd call it hubris, right?
Hubris.
Yes, hubris. I think that's my favorite. Right? It would be something like very Boston ego and self-importance and self-righteousness.
Nice.
Yeah, that's really my fragrance. So, but anyway, we're gonna
That's
move
what I
on.
always say. A fragrance does need to tell a story, and
A fragrance isn't a story, right? It is a story. It's an absolute story, right? And it's a story from a sense that when you smell it, it's so sensorial, right? And we speak of olfactories, right? And olfactories is a translation through the olfactive nerve, right? So meaning that you're smelling, but what's really happening is that there is a firing of neurons, and you're interpreting that. It's such a beautiful thing,
Right.
And the story makes everything just smell better.
And is that why when you buy fragrance from a certain place and
Yeah.
you apply it,
Yeah.
it reminds me of that certain somebody or a certain place? Is
Yes.
it because of those neurons that are firing out in your
It
brain?
is, right? Because now when the olfactive aspect always speaks of possibly two things, or not possibly, but probably. It's memories and emotions. So for instance, right, whenever I smell fig, I'm always reminded of my grandmother's backyard.
She had a fig tree.
She had a fig tree. Well, a couple of fig trees, right? And it's one of my most fond memories.
Oh, that's nice.
So I smell anything with fig, immediately transports me to my
your childhood.
Yeah, to my childhood, and it's so beautiful because I can smell the figs in the backyard, and would always sneak behind into the trees,
Yeah.
and my grandmother would give a lashing, but it does that. So whenever you smell a fragrance and it transports you like that, you know that you've built a connection into that fragrance, right? So other people can have a different approach, like a technical one.
A technical one.
Yeah,
How so?
so some people, for instance, right, as we move into the next fragrance, which is going to be, let's say, Delina.
Okay.
Which
one
is,
of my personal faves.
I think, a lot of people's faves, because this has become quite a powerhouse.
It has.
So I'm going to do the Delina exclusive
Okay. I have the exclusive and the normal one, by the
and
way.
and the essence, yeah. So for instance, right, so some people have a very technical formulation to it. So as they smell it, what they're doing is they are trying to pick out the ingredients. So somebody would go
Rose.
rose, lychee, a hint of like a very floral undertone or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever the case is,
Okay, so
right?
that's the technical part of it.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that in a sense that my biggest concern with that is that when you are not well versed or your nose is not very well cultivated, you will miss the artistic part of it.
Right.
Because you are limiting it to almost just as an isolation of ingredients. There's nothing wrong with it, don't get me wrong, right? But some people just need to understand that there's a lot more to it. A fragrance is not an individual ingredients list, but it's the sum of the collective. Because remember, the perfumer is telling a story, right? My hand is shaking.
Oh,
I don't know why. Tremor.
maybe you need a bit of bubbly.
Well, if I drink on the job, they're gonna fire me, right? So I'm not doing that. Right. So what would need to happen, right, is that I wouldn't approach it that way. Right?
May I?
Of course.
Yeah.
Delina.
Delina,
Right.
of course.
I wouldn't approach it that way, right? In a sense that it limits you, right? I mean, most of us are not as talented. Right, not even myself, right? And I think I'm pretty okay.
You're amazing. You're
sometimes-
pretty talented.
I think
This is the guy to come to, guys, at Skins.
it's true.
Come to Brian, Skins Mainland.
Yeah, so I love it. But yeah, so I'm gonna deviate from that
Okay.
technical approach.
All right.
So smell it, try to go more. So there's two things I always want the clients to look for, right? Smell it, try to think of two things. How do I feel about it, and how does it make me feel? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then try to work your way from
So
that.
good.
For instance, when I smell Delina, I get a sense of it's this innocence.
Me.
Yeah.
You smell me.
I smell you. Not quite as lovely, of course, but you know, it is quite a cutie. It's funny. I had a client yesterday, and she was like to me, she's like, "Delina is cute."
It's cute.
She's like, "It's cute. It's pink. It's innocent. It's like it's delicious."
Yeah.
But she's not the kind of girl that is wild. She's not dangerous. She's a cutie.
She's a cutie.
She's the kind of girl that you
pie.
take to meet your mom.
Right.
You know what I mean? She's so
Right.
bubbly. And obviously because of the color, it plays an illustration into the overall feel of the smell, right?
Absolutely.
You know, it is so playful. But she is quite a chic lady. Quite chic. I do like that
Very,
about her.
very
Right,
chic.
that was Delina.
Okay.
And then we're gonna move into, okay, we'll leave her last. Okay, we'll leave her last.
Okay.
This
Roger.
is Roger.
One of my favorite perfumers.
He
Out
is
there.
talented,
He's
incredibly.
extremely talented.
He's incredibly talented, and it's also quite unfortunate we don't do the entire Roger Dove collection. But Skins has brought out some of the most amazing within that collection. You know, those that are not familiar with who he is, we get a lot of clients coming in going Roja. The gentleman is English. All right, so it's Roger.
He's an Englishman.
Yeah, he's an Englishman, right? He's as English as they come, as bold and as eccentric as you can find a man.
I love that man.
Incredibly talented, you know, very well cultivated in the world of perfumery, right? For those that don't know, actually, he actually came from the house of Guerlain. Yeah.
What?
Yes, he
Okay,
comes from
even
Guerlain.
myself,
You
I
didn't
did not know that.
Okay, so Roger Dove
But
spent...
Guerlain then, that explains it.
No, it's a powerhouse, right?
such a powerhouse.
So he was, I think he was one of the in-house perfumers. I know not the in-house perfumer from Guerlain, because Thierry Wassa was always being the understudy to Jacques Guerlain. But he
Okay.
comes from that house.
Okay.
So,
Well, that explains it.
yeah, and then this is Enigma. Such a lovely word, right? So dark and mysterious. Is it?
Stunning.
Dark and mysterious.
It's dark and mysterious.
Yes, that's an enigma, right? Enigma is, I think the English translation for that is a mystery.
A mystery.
Yeah, like something that is hard to explain, something that is a little hard to dissolve.
I'm an enigma wrapped in a riddle and cash.
Oh
honey.
my goodness. Maybe that, all of that. Yeah, so when something is really difficult to explain,
It's an
difficult
enigma.
to, almost like to solve.
Yes.
Right, not to,
You can't figure it out.
Yeah, you can't figure it out, right? It's so abstract, right?
Would you describe me as an enigma?
I don't know, you're too bubbly to be an enigma. I'm like you chat and you give it away.
Yes.
Remember, an enigma has to be so reserved.
Reserved
You know what I mean?
and
You have to almost like walk eggshells around it. You have to
Yes.
think, what is she about? I think you're a little too chatty.
I'm too chatty.
Yeah.
Too,
No, but-
too bubbly.
Too bubbly. But I like that about you, right?
As a fragrance, you describe me as Delina.
I think you are a bit of Delina blended with a little bit of explicit.
Ooh.
So there's a bit of innocence,
Yeah.
but like a naughtiness
A
to
naughty
it.
streak
You know what I
to
mean?
that.
So it's
Okay,
like
I
a
like that.
best of both worlds.
Okay, perfect.
So that was Enigma from Roger Dove. There's another one that I do love from the collection. I just didn't bring it out, and this was called the Dangerous. Yeah, Dangerous is literally true to its word, but we'll do that on some other time.
Also by Roger.
By Roger. Roger Dub. I don't want this to be an anticlimactic, right? It's because it's such an amazing scent. Frederic Malle calls this a masterpiece. And I think one of the most amazing about it is that it happened by accident.
Really?
Yeah, so they created a wonderful masterpiece, but they didn't intend on it. I mean, they were trying to create the story. So I watched this wonderful interview with.
I love the story behind the fragrance.
So Dominic Rapion.
And Brian knows a lot about fragrances and stories behind each and every fragrance.
I told the stories. It's the best I can
Story
remember
time,
them.
guys.
No, there was a wonderful story. So they were actually trying to create an everyday scent, something that can be worn on a day-to-day basis, right? And then in the process, they ended up creating a masterpiece.
Wow.
Right? And then this is how Portrait of a Lady came into name. It's actually titled after a very famous play. Did you know that?
No.
Okay, so have you ever heard of a very famous play? I think it's by Henry James, My Fair Lady.
Of course.
Yes,
My
so
Fair Lady.
My Portrait of a Lady,
Portrait of a Lady
is named after
My Fair Lady.
My Fair Lady.
Ah,
What I mean,
okay.
classic after a classic.
Oh, I love that.
Of course, I mean, the preciseness of that history is somewhat always very questionable.
Yes.
Right, but the stories go that that's how it goes.
Okay.
Now, Portrait of a Lady, oh my goodness, it's such a dignity, so decadent, right? Mm-hmm. They actually used 400 Turkish roses in this.
Wow.
400 Turkish roses.
Is it 400 Turkish roses in one bottle?
In one bottle.
Okay.
One bottle.
That explains the
decadence.
price tag.
Yeah, it explains the price tag. Well, the price tag, I mean, that is just a number.
It's just a number.
This is a masterpiece. You know what a masterpiece is? A masterpiece is something that is timeless.
Yes.
Something that is, something that evolves beyond just the means and the tickings of time. This is, oh my goodness, I love this fragrance.
400 Turkish roses in one bottle.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the ingredients. Like I said, it's not really a necessity. There are moments to go through ingredients.
Thank you. But okay, so it's mostly rose.
Yeah, mostly Turkish rose. Yeah, Turkish rose, yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah, sorry, can't stop looking at my nails.
I love your nails.
Yeah.
They look good.
had to get them done.
Thank you. For me.
Okay.
Or just always all the time.
Oh no, it's all the time.
I know, you're always so groomed. I know. Brian, look at Brian's nails. I know.
Yeah.
Brian is the perfect gentleman. He looks like this all the time.
Never a day off.
Never a day off.
Except Mondays.
No ways.
Mondays are...
You look sharp all the time. You're like...
You see, you look so fresh all
Yeah.
the time.
He
Like, you go on your
does.
off day, like Monday,
People can't tell.
You probably still look better than everyone else.
Mondays are suspect. I must
Monday is
admit,
a suspect.
Mondays are suspect, right? Because Mondays, I never wake up on... I'm not in the mood for Mondays.
You wear a 3-piece suit every day.
I know, but I have to carry it.
I love it.
Except Mondays. I never carry it on Mondays.
Yeah?
Mondays are exhausting.
So what do you wear on Mondays?
A 3-piece suit.
You do?
I do wear 3-piece on Mondays, but I'm just not in the mood for it. I'm not in the mood for it.
Oh, wow. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and then that's Turkish rose.
That is Portrait of a Lady.
Yeah.
That has the Turkish rose. So a lot of people, Brian, and I think it's a question that I myself need to be answered because
Yeah.
I make that mistake a lot.
Yes.
Where I always come here and I say, oh, but this is a fragrance for guys.
Okay.
And you always check me and correct me like, a fragrance does not have a gender.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
What do you
right?
mean by that?
It's because, okay, so now classically, right, when fragrances were created, right, now the perfumer would create the fragrance with a personality in mind.
In mind.
Not a gender.
Not a gender,
Not a
okay.
gender. All right, so for instance, right, when we think about fragrances in posterity, we would think floral fragrances being feminine. And we would think of a classical fougere, right, which is an aromatic, being masculine. Right, and that's how we would think of fragrances. And I think for the longest time, fragrances kind of evolved like that. But now when we think about it, right, is that we realize that it's not that the fragrance was created for a lady or the fragrance was created for a man, but it's just the different personalities. For instance, right, would you realize that there are feminine males and then there are masculine ladies.
That's correct.
Yeah, so for instance, a guy can have a feminine personality.
Right, and you get a female that has very male
Yes,
energy.
very, very dominant, right? Like a
Right.
very alpha type of energy, right? And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that
There's
at
nothing
all.
wrong with that, right? So what people need to understand is that if you walk into the store, and let's assume that you're a guy. You walk into the store, you sit down, I bring out Delina, right? Firstly, it's pink. And real men do wear pink, by the way.
Absolutely.
Listen.
I know. Look at.
You know what I mean? Like, so let's not even. Okay, so
Real men do wear pink.
real men do wear pink, right? So it's a thing. So you walk into the store, you see Delina, it's pink. It's got somewhat a silhouette of a lady, right? And
It
this
does.
is it's a silhouette of a lady. It's because when they created it, they had a lady in mind. They did. Honest to God, they did. But what happens is that you take the fragrance, right? You smell it. Okay. I do think that it is a floral scent.
Okay.
I smell it, and you smell it. It's got a wonderful intonation of like a fruity feel into it, right?
And you think most guys get female?
I think a lot of people get female in it, right? So, but what I realize is that
A guy can get away with it.
a guy can get away with this, right? And all you need to understand is that if you smell something and it resonates with you, then it's okay to wear it. And this is what we mean by that fragrance doesn't have a gender, okay? We are not advocating for any lines here.
Right.
We're just saying that fragrance has its own personality, right? If you smell it and you think, I could pull this off, I wear Delina. I do blend it a little bit sometimes, even though I'm not a big fan
Of mixing.
of layering fragrances.
Yes.
I know my other colleagues are gonna go, no, that's crazy, but not for me, right? So I'm a purist. I like to keep fragrances very pure.
Pure.
Because I always believe the hard work has already been done.
Done, exactly.
My job and your job is just to experience it.
It's like a chef, like at a restaurant. They never put salt or any condiments on the table because why are you salting the food? Because he's already done his job.
Unless you're doing fast foods, of course.
Unless you're doing fast
foods, right?
foods.
Because now those are not prepared by a 5-star chef, you know what I mean? But that is true, right? For instance, if you go to a 5-star hotel or a 5-star restaurant, they've got this well-renowned chef. He does a wonderful meal, presentation, all the hard work is done, serves it on a platter. And you go, nope,
Tomato sauce.
listen, tomato sauce, I'd like to carve this way. Let's add whatever into it. You're missing the beauty of it.
The beauty of
You know what I mean?
it.
Because this person
And
has
he
just,
wants you to experience that.
yes, this person has created a masterpiece just for you.
So same applies with the fragrances.
I mean, when we spoke of Portrait of a Lady earlier on, we spoke of a very renowned perfumer named Dominic Rapion, right? He's one of the most brilliant perfumers out there. For those that don't know his previous work, I think he collaborated with Alberto Morelos
Okay.
on some of the Acqua di Gio work. And I think it was the Calvin Klein Euphoria for Men with Carlos Benan. But he is somebody that a lot of the fragrance houses go to, right? So he's a very brilliant guy. So when Frederic Malle thought of something that was going to be a masterpiece, he had to go to him because he makes timeless fragrances. Well, him and Jean-Claude Helena. Okay, Jean is actually my favorite, but nevertheless, right? So we are talking about the gender.
The gender, yeah.
Aspect of fragrances.
That there is no gender. It's actually made with a personality in
Yes.
mind. I love it when you say it like that because you actually don't think when you buy a fragrance. You automatically think, oh, this is for guys, this is for girls. But when a perfumer does make it with a personality in mind, then it makes...
I mean, the personality can be female. And I say, that's okay. If you smell fragrance and as a guy, you think it's too feminine for you, there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
But I normally challenge my male clients, right, to really try fragrances that sometimes that will be a little too far out of their comfort zone.
Right.
I mean, I do that with you sometimes,
You
right?
do.
So I'm like, challenge yourself, right? Fragrance is meant to be experienced. It's something that if you set an olfactive boundary, right, you're limiting your whole, the wholesomeness of it all. You're limiting your experiences because it can get better.
It does.
You know what I mean? So for instance, if you start going, I don't like floral scents, I don't like citrus notes, I don't like ouds, okay? you've only interpreted a certain aspect of florals, a certain aspect of citrus notes, a certain aspects of oud. Not all florals smell the same, not all oud smell the same, not all citrus fragrances smell the same.
Smell the same.
So if you create a boundary, like this little cage, you're gonna miss so many wonderful fragrances.
Brian, let's touch on, a little bit on oud.
Okay, oud.
So now in my last video, I spoke a little bit about oud.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure whether it was fungi from a tree bark or tree bark itself. What is oud?
Okay, so oud it's a little tricky, right? I'm gonna explain it as accurately as I can, right? And of course, for your viewers that are a lot more knowledgeable than I, okay. So, listen, you're more than welcome to correct.
Correct
right?
us, please, in the comments below, guys.
Yes, please do that, right? So an oud is a resin.
It's a resin.
It's a resin, right? So the technical explanation goes this way, right? So there is a specific tree, and this is really important, right? And I think this is called the aquilarian tree, which is predominantly, more often than not, indigenous to the region of Laos.
Okay.
Right, so Laos is, I think it's a region somewhere around India, right? India, Southeast Asia, right?
Okay.
That area, right? And this is probably the richest source of our oud globally. Now, what happens to this very specific tree is that when it's attacked by bacteria, the tree defends itself. It produces a certain liquid, right? And what happens is that it hardens the bark or the tree hardens and almost goes to a very dark color, and we would carve that part out, okay? And that part is famously known as the agarwood. Yes, remember, oud is actually a process of the agarwood.
Right.
So we would get the agarwood, which would be sometimes a very small chunk of wood, or sometimes could be quite lumpy. So it depends, right? And the interesting thing about agarwood, right? And if it has changed, they can correct. Per ounce, agarwood is actually a lot more expensive than gold per ounce.
Wow.
This is
Nice
why,
to hear that.
yeah, this is why oud fragrances, when they are done organically, tend to fetch for quite a sum.
Yeah.
So
it's not cheap.
No, it's not cheap. If organic oud is used, it's
Right.
not going to be cheap.
Right.
Because like I said, per ounce, agarwood can fetch more than gold an ounce, right?
Wow.
So yeah, and then obviously oud becomes the processing of that whole agarwood and
Right.
so on.
And why do you think people have caught on to it like recently? It's been around for ages.
So for ages, right?
And I know that Middle Eastern people have been using it
Yeah.
forever.
Okay, they caught into it at some point, a lot earlier than a lot of South Africans did. They use it in some experience. It's an experience of theirs. It's called a baaacck experience, right? Where
Okay.
they almost incense
Yes.
the agarwood or the oud, right? Almost like they burn it, and then the smell really just almost kind of just, I don't know what the English word is for that, right? It just really envelopes you.
Envelopes you.
I think,
Yes.
lack of a better word, we'll go for that. You know what I mean? I don't think that's the problem. Okay, but we'll go for that. So, but they love it for that, right? And then French people have been wearing oud for quite some time, but oud, I think, became a bit of a phenomenon in South Africa initially from a very famous designer house. I'm not going to mention the house because we don't sell it here.
No, we do
You know what I
not.
mean? We're not about to create abominations in a house in a sanctuary, right? But when that fragrance launched, that's when people caught to oud. And then I think there were about one or two other fragrance houses, designer houses that caught into oud. And I think oud just caught on in South Africa. It was
Yeah.
big.
It's my personal favorite as
What
well.
ouds?
I do like ouds, but not the very overbearing ones, because it does sometimes smell a little animalistic.
It is quite animalic.
Yes.
It's because oud, I imagine in its organic state, is quite animalic. It's very raw, dirty, very, very almost earthy. Right. And this is why when we speak of oud in a classical accord, which is speaks to, it's a very technical explanation, right? It's almost like a synthetic. They always use typically musk, but as an animalic note to add into that animalic feel of the organic state of wood. Right? But there's obviously different approaches and different aspects to it. But the one thing that you always need to understand about fragrances, right, is that every perfumer or the nose, right, uses certain ingredients, giving his style, because that's how they tell stories. Earlier on, when we spoke of storytelling, think of a fragrance as a story. I think that's the best way to describe it. Think of a fragrance as a story. When you're smelling it, all you're doing is you are interpreting the story.
It's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But because all these guys are different cultural backgrounds, right? American perfumers tell their stories differently. Italian perfumers tell their stories differently.
Completely differently.
You know what I mean? Italian perfumers always like to add a feel of, this concept of the Mediterranean feel or the Med Sea. There's always going to be crispness, these merino chords, right? Like mandarin, bergamot. And then French perfumers, they've got their own style, right? Because the culture just has add into it. And sometimes it also depends on, whatever the scope was for that specific fragrance. But the most talented ones are, I think, first and foremost, artists. Right, they're artists first, and then everything else second.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's the best way to go about it.
That is the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
All right, so for myself,
Yeah.
personally,
Of course, always for you.
I am an oversprayer. And I spray everywhere with no shame. I was saying last week, I literally spray from top to bottom. Brian, is there a correct way of applying perfume?
Okay, so I've been dreading that question, right?
And is there such a thing as overspraying?
Ooh, okay. So that's a really good question. That's a really good question, right? And it's funny because I think you asked that question when we had that
When Mason,
Thibaut Crivelli
Yes.
was in the store.
Yes. And he said he oversprays.
He said he oversprays, right? Okay, so it's a tricky one. And if there are any purists in your viewers, right, I'm gonna give him a little bit of leeway, yeah,
Okay.
right? Okay, so I'm gonna try to be very politically correct. Personally, I feel there is a thing called wearing too much fragrance.
Okay.
Personally, okay. I think you can wear a little too much fragrance, where the fragrance becomes too obnoxious. You know what I mean? And I don't find that attractive.
Right.
Because remember, fragrance,
To the point where it's offensive.
it's offensive, right?
Yeah.
And I think nobody wants to be offended.
Right.
Right, for instance, you and I are having a discussion. Neither one of us is screaming at each other because we're so close to each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I tend to want to find fragrance in somewhat the same concept and the same idea. If your fragrance is screaming, and I'm like, but why are you so loud?
Why are you so loud?
Why are you so
Tone
loud?
it down.
Right, and please do forgive me, right?
Yeah.
And this is a personal thing.
Okay.
Okay, and I want to allude to that part. It is, I think, to a very great detail, a very personal thing. For some people, they can overspray, and I think that's fine. If you are okay with it. Just remember this, most of us are gonna find you insufferable. You know what I mean? You're gonna be offending us from person to person, end to end. You know what I mean? So just be careful about how you apply your fragrance.
Okay, so how should we apply fragrance?
So I think I'm going to get to that part. But I also, in the same breath, equally do believe you can wear too little fragrance.
Okay.
Okay, and I think a lot of people do wear too little fragrance sometimes
Because they don't want to offend people.
because they don't want to offend people. Right? I think sometimes they can just wear too little and then they will start talking about, but it didn't last, and so on and on and on. But I also don't want to go into those because
Yeah.
these are very difficult ideas and concepts.
Exactly.
But in as much as that, I think there is a way to properly accentuate your fragrance.
Okay.
Right? And this can differ from person to person. It's not very linear. You know what I mean? It's not set in stone. It's not a commandment. But I personally and genuinely feel that this is the most beautiful way and the best way to experience your fragrance. Okay? And then Should we do this now or later on?
What are we doing?
Okay, so we just simply
On how to apply?
on how to apply fragrance.
Okay. Should I stand up and you can tell me where to apply and demonstrate?
Okay, so
Okay.
They are-
Choose a fragrance for me.
oh, but you're already wearing such a lovely fragrance, and I love it. I don't want to ruin it.
You know, okay.
I don't want to ruin it. Okay, so we're not going to put it on.
We're not gonna put it on.
Yeah, we're not going to put it on.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to just. Where should we stand?
I think we can stand here. Dress looks amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
Right. So, for instance, right, you are wearing a very summery type of look.
Yes.
Skin exposed, you know, and there are hotspots about fragrances, right? So hotspots speaks of the most, we'll call these the pulse points.
The pulse points.
Okay, the
yes,
pulse points.
Yes. I think I said something about the pulse points
Yeah.
last week.
Did she? Okay.
But I don't know if I said the correct.
Let's just not
the
do my
correct
job.
one.
Just don't take my job. Right. So, and these pulse points speak of, these are probably the best ways for your fragrance to create a beautiful tone
Okay.
or a beautiful accent. All right. And there is some type of consensus where we can agree that these are the best areas. I just happen to believe that some of them are inefficient. Okay. So some people would go these areas here,
Okay.
here, and then some people would go these areas here.
Right.
Right? And then some people would go the neckline,
All
right?
right.
And sometimes we refer to this as a contact line.
A contact line.
Yeah, a contact
okay.
line. This is your point of contact. All right, so
Oh, for when I lean and give you a hug,
okay.
and then I'm like, you smell amazing.
That's
because
what it-
of the contact line.
From the contact line,
Okay.
right? And this was also because people would go behind the earlobes,
Whisper nonsense.
whisper nonsense.
Actually, that could be a name of a fragrance. Whisper nonsense.
I've actually heard of some of the most wildly far-fetched names. It's a thing. We'll talk about those. So you can do behind the earlobes. And then the most important, I believe, right? This is the neckline, behind the neckline.
Behind the
Yeah,
neck,
just
okay.
this, almost this area here.
Okay.
And because we believe that this is the greatest area to give your fragrance the highest point of tone. And it adds into that sillage point. You know, we sometimes call it the bubble or the trail. There's so many different wordings for it. But I feel like that is one of the best areas to wear your fragrance. Right. Now, some people are very hard about the technicalities of it.
Okay.
Okay, so they would, for instance, right? Because
So the pulse points.
yeah, we're gonna go. So I'm not gonna go the pulse points, right? But because of the look, the pulse points are gonna work lovely.
Okay, because I'm wearing a summer dress.
Because you're wearing a summer dress, you're doing a sleeveless, so it's gonna work. 'Cause
Okay.
it is exposed.
Okay.
Okay, so you can wear it here. So we're not gonna. Okay, this is a little bit. We'll add a different tone to it.
Okay.
So we can do that.
So 2 sprays each.
Okay, well, I mean, it can be one.
Okay.
You can gauge for yourself.
All right,
It's fine.
okay.
Remember, it adds into that whole idea. Do I want to wear too much?
So there's no set rule.
No, that's not said
Okay.
rule, right? And I think people have to be. Listen, it's okay. It's your money. You are paying for it, right? These are not commandments, right? Wear your fragrances the best way that you feel like it expresses you. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that's the best way to go about it.
Right.
It has to express you.
You.
If in that moment you are feeling delirious and joyous and you feel like, I just want to bath myself in Delina,
Then do it.
go ahead and do it.
Go for it, yeah.
And then, in this case, the back of the neck
Okay.
would create the bubble.
All right.
Right. So I'm so sorry. We're gonna kill Utopia. Okay. So I'm gonna do
Alright.
about 3 sprays.
At the back of the neck.
The back of the
Alright.
neck, right? So I'm creating the bubble.
Alright.
Right. So I think the bubble is really important because it's gonna add into the overall experience.
Alright,
Right.
okay.
And then I'm gonna do your contact lines. Okay, so I'm gonna do.
When I get that hug.
I'm gonna do 1, and then 1.
2.
Okay.
The contact line.
The contact line. All right. So, like I said, I'm a minimalistic wearer. I don't want to overdo it. All right. And I also believe that for a lady wearing fragrance, it's a tool of seduction. Right. I want to be able to be trapped. I want you to invite me in. Right. So it's something very intimate. Right. I want to be able to be so close to you that it just captivates me. Right. So I feel like that's one of the best ways for a lady to wear fragrance. But if you are a very bold and daring lady, and you want to walk into a room and you want everybody to smile you, I think that's also fine.
Okay.
You can do that.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that,
Okay.
which is you. That's fine. That's okay. So no harm.
Mpumi the overspray, yeah?
You know what I mean? That's okay. I mean, let's call it Mpumi the indulger.
The indulger, I like that.
That's a better word.
Yes,
Mpumi the indulger.
Mpumi the indulger.
Yeah. So I think that's one way to go about it.
That's okay, perfect.
So you just have to remember, I think this is the best way. Some people may disagree with that. And I've seen a very famous YouTuber have different notions about it.
Oh, and how to apply fragrance.
Fragrances,
Okay.
right? People have spoken of
Behind the knees.
behind the knee.
I said that last week.
Yeah, no, they've spoken of this, and I'm like, these are interesting areas, very interesting areas. I just haven't explored them yet.
Okay.
Right, but I'm also willing to concede that I don't know everything about fragrances.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit of humility,
A little bit of humility.
just a little bit. All right,
All right.
I think that's.
And that is it. I think in terms of price point, what would you advise somebody that wants to buy niche fragrances that that Skin sells a lot of that, but can't afford to?
Okay, so
Because you don't have to smell, you don't have to buy like a 20K perfume.
no, not at all, not at all. In fact, people, I think the most wonderful thing about Skins is that there's a pricing point for everyone.
For everyone, okay.
Right. And this is beautiful about it. We have so many brands in here, like such a large palette of brands and fragrances, right? As far as budgeting goes, right, you can spend anything from 2,000 Rand to 3,000 Rand, 10,000 Rand, 20,000 Rand. It really doesn't matter.
Right.
I think once you've developed a connection with your fragrance, the pricing point just becomes inconsequential. It's immaterial. Right. So if you loved a 2,000 Rand fragrance, I think that's wonderful.
Right.
If you have a connection with that, I think that's amazing. If you build a connection with a 16,000 Rand fragrance, that's equally as wonderful. So I wouldn't worry too much about the how much. I'd be a lot more concerned with, am I connected to my purchase? Right, because when you're connected to your purchase, there is no buyer's remorse.
There isn't
because you've
any
made the
buyer's
best
remorse.
possible choice
Absolutely.
for yourself.
Yes.
Right, and this is why I always stress, right? Build a connection with your fragrance. I mean, allow yourself to be aroused emotionally by what you're smelling. You are going to be smelling like that for days.
For days,
Right.
exactly.
So if you're going to commit yourself to that, fall in love with them. Yeah. So as far as money goes, it's a very small detail. Right. For instance, when you come into Skins, we don't stress the money part. We stress the experience.
The experience.
Skins is a journey. You come into Skins. The one thing that we really care about, myself and all the other my colleagues in the store, is that we care about giving you the most wonderful experience. You come in here, we take you on this beautiful journey, and all these different brands in the store, right, and all these amazing stories and different facets. It's for you to experience.
Yeah.
And that's priceless.
Oh, thank you so much, Brian. I have had such an amazing education.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys have as well. Brian is amazing. He is like a fountain of knowledge when it comes to fragrances. And
Flattery.
he
Flattery.
looks good all the time, so that's even a plus.
It's okay, flattery will get you everywhere. It will. With me, it will get you everywhere.
Will it get me a free perfume?
Not on camera. Not on camera. Maybe.
I knew you'd say that. Thank you so much, Brian. It's
always a
been
pleasure.
amazing.
All right. Awesome
Yeah.
stuff. Great. And of course, a wonderful day to all your viewers.
Yes.
And hopefully, I'll be seeing them at Skins.
Yeah, come to Skins Mainland, guys,
Yeah.
and ask for Brian.